When did fake it until you make it backfire? I just heard in a podcast about a guy who lived on an army base for 3 years posing as a soldier until he got caught due to drinking and driving. The guy apparently was well known and went so far as to brief incoming soldiers on and even responded to a bomb threat since he posed as an odd tech. The guy responds to bomb threats and gets caught because of a DUI. Lol. I took orchestra in elementary school and I eventually realized that I was just not going to understand violin. But I still wanted to be in orchestra because it had some perks. So, whenever we had lesson I put my fingers over the strings and moved my bow around like I meant it. When we had to play individually, I had to do it for real. I thought maybe, by some miracle, I'd get it and play normally. I didn't. I work as an accountant with a theater background. I'm 6 years in and I'm working solo with no one above me in the company besides the owners. I have an audit, a $16 million lock to acquire, and another company we just purchased. This is the tipping point, I'm sure. I taught some anatomy and physiology labs to pre-nursing majors. These girls knew more about anatomy and physiology than I did. I'm an expert in ecology, but somehow I got the job of teaching this class. I figured I'd just look at the answers on the worksheets as the semester went on. When I finally got the student feedback, it was a blow to my sense of confidence. About half of them did indeed notice that I had just been looking at the fucking worksheet answers. I had a job that I was way underqualified for, yet I still was surprisingly given the offer. 8 months in, the fact really started to show that I wasn't the assumed genius, savior the hiring manager thought I was. Fortunately, I got offered a different job by someone who wasn't really desperate to hire. Guy I used to work with told me about when he used to work as an electrician apprentice at a plant. When there was nothing to do, which apparently was most of the time, the lead guy and him would walk out to a random spot in the plant with a ladder, a conduit bender and a bent piece of conduit. Then one of them would stand on top of the ladder and the other on the ground holding the conduit, and they'd just chit-chat all day. If any of the bosses wandered by, they'd nod and pass the piece of conduit up to the guy on the ladder, who would then make a show of trying to fit it in somewhere. Said they both made it through 3 rounds of layoffs doing that. A few years ago I got a job interview after months of looking. I was desperate. I thought I was going to be working in the mail room for the city, but when I arrived it turned out it was for delivering mail between city offices. Okay, no big deal, I can do that. Well, in my province we have G1 learners, G2 still have some restrictions about when, who you can drive with, and G, full license. Well, I needed my full G for the job but hadn't gotten around to doing the test. No big deal, I thought, I'll just go along and schedule a test ASAP, hopefully before any paperwork needs to be done. So I went through the interview and I think I'm home free, but no. They want to do a driver's test right then and there, and I need to present my license to the testing company. Thinking quick, I tell them I don't have my license on me. Well, they need it and they were willing to find a city employee to drive me back out to my house, tilde 30 minutes away, and get it. Backed into a corner, I finally have to admit that I don't have my G license. I blurted it out and basically ran out of the office and didn't look back. Still one of the most embarrassing moments of my life. A lot of the big instances of fraud came from fake it until you make it mentality. Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos were faking the technology until they could get it to work. Fire Festival was faking it until they could get the money together. Anna Delve intended to make it one day but she ponzied her way through until she would get there. Dr. Christopher Dunge, Dr. Death, was a horrible back surgeon but he kept operating and working on patients anyway. I tend to think fraudsters don't really intend to hurt other people, they're just grossly incompetent and trying to cover their asses. This reminds me of a Taifa post where Op moved to a new neighborhood for just a few months and decided to take some LSD to break it in. Op thought it was a good idea to go for a walk, and when he went outside, his new neighbor greeted him. Being on LSD and a bit of an introvert, He avoided conversation by speaking French as he knew enough to get by and did not plan on staying there for an extended period of time. This went on for about 8 months, longer than he expected to stay there, and eventually the neighbor had a friend of hers over who also spoke French and tried to start up a conversation with him. That's when he was like, I don't speak French. Went to visit my older cousin in a big city, small town girl. Before going out, he told me that the friends we would be meeting are super snobby, and would probably make fun of me if I told them I was from small town A. Today I would tell him to get better friends. But when I was 18 I just wanted to fit in. We agree I would tell them I'm from the city X. So the blonde bombshell in the group, 6 years older, starts talking to me while my cousin and his friend head off to buy shots. Where are you from? City X. OMG, me too. She proceeds to ask me which school I went to, which coffee shop was my favorite and where my parents work, just making polite conversation. Of course, I do the adult thing and confess make up an entire fake life story. My cousin gets back to the table with the shots and I have never been more grateful for the opportunity to put alcohol in my mouth and stop words from coming out. As seeing me knock back my shot like an animal, my cousin forgets our cover story and loudly proclaims, "Good God. You don't have to drink like you do in small town A, just chill." I did not look at bombshell for the rest of the night. I have seldom wanted the earth to swallow me as much as I did in that moment. I was in a Skype job interview that involved multiple rounds. In one session I talked to person A, then person B, and then person C. During the interview with person B, I was asked to talk about one of my weaknesses after having already talked about one of my strengths. I explained that I'm very comfortable with creative problem solving, but sometimes I take for granted that the status quo exists for a reason. Person B responded, "I see your point, but I don't think that's a problem in the grand scheme of things. You seem very entrepreneurial to me, and people with that motivation have a healthy skepticism for how things have to be." That was a pleasant thing to hear, especially in an industry that involves bringing in new business and keeping clients. I thanked person B and told him I'd never thought of myself as entrepreneurial, but there was something that felt true about that description. Cut to my interview with person C. First question, what are some words that people might use to describe you? Well, one thing I've been told is that I am entrepreneurial. I am less of a leader and more of a collaborator. I value creativity. Blah blah blah. Person C, so, Kiminub, you said you're entrepreneurial. What businesses have you started? Might as well have quit at that point once I said none. Nothing I said to person C was going to convince him I wasn't full of shit. Orgasms. If you fake it at first, you just never gonna make it. A writer I know decided he could make easy money writing romance novels under a false name, even though he didn't like romance novels at all. Turns out it wasn't that easy, but he was very good at it and got stuck writing romance novels for a living for a while, hating his job and not having time to write anything he actually wanted to write. Got a part-time job as a bartender to help with bills. Told them I knew how to bartend. I can pour a whiskey, Coke and beer, so just figured I'd pick up the rest as I went along. First week I was serving to get to know the menu and someone called in sick. Owner makes me bartend. So I'm doing fine, just beers and a few mixed drinks. Then a party of about 40 people coming from a wedding come in and starts asking for all these different shots, different specialty drinks, etc. Totally shit my pants. I play the piano, not well, but decently. I can't sight read, but I can practice from notes and play a piece of music. My friend was studying music in college and needed to find a piano player to accompany her during class. I told her I could do it because I played piano, but I didn't really understand what that meant. I assumed I'd be able to practice the music beforehand. They wanted someone to be able to play a piece of music on the spot, sight unseen, while she sang. I couldn't do it. I faked it for 2 sessions and the instructor told my friend she had to get another accompanist because I was not good enough. I felt like a douchebag. Frown. I struggle remembering names. After first introductions, especially in large groups, I tend to forget them and as a result, just don't use names. It usually works out well until I remember them properly, but sometimes, I'm put in the spotlight and things go south fast. I knew a girl who would apply to jobs she was unqualified for, including a job at NASA and at Apple. She lied about her qualifications on her resumes. She landed several high-paying jobs, but would get fired after a month or two once her co-workers realized she did not have the skills to fulfill her duties. She would boast on Facebook about how she landed her dream job every few months. Not sure what she's doing now since I haven't spoken to her in years. I believe she moved to another country. Oh, and she took credit for the Mars rover and for the Beatles on iTunes. The guys who act like they're ex-special forces on the first day of basic training because they were androtic in high school. I remember one saying, "I've basically already done this every year since I was a freshman," as we got off the bus. Idiot washed out by week 2. When, due to a tight budget on a magazine I edited, way back when, we couldn't afford a fashion correspondent, so I did it myself under an assumed female name, I'm male, and didn't tell anyone. Surprisingly, it was quite well received. Ran for 3 months or so before I got invited to a clothing launch.